Hey everybody, how you doing? I found that super interesting. So I'm going to come at it from a different perspective because I am definitely nowhere near as technical as these guys that we've just had up here, and probably nowhere near as technical as you people in the room. I'm going to come at it much more from a business perspective, but evals play a super important part of that as well. So what if there was a global law firm that had tens of thousands of staff, but the way they're dealing with all the internal inquiries was still manual, and we're talking thousands a day? And then what if we're talking about a brand new startup that wants to do something with AI, and they got no customers, and they have no users, and they got no data? Where do they begin? How can AI be used and an approach be used that it can still be beneficial for both of them to get somewhere started quickly, evaluate it, and take it to production in a valuable way? So my name is Ben. I'm co-founder of Amplifi and Impact. We invest in, build a whole bunch of different AI things, but I want to talk more from our consulting business side. So Amplifi and Impact works with lots of businesses around the UK, around the world, and we help them with their AI strategy. So we walk in rooms, we figure out what they're trying to do as a business, we talk about what they're playing around with AI, and we help them go from concept to POC to production to evolving and growing in that space. The way I looked at things and the way I get involved in it is I'm, like I said, not on the technical side all the way. I'm dangerous enough on the business side. So I normally sit in between technology and business. I sit with boards or C-suites or co-founders and managers. I sit with technical teams, and we figure out approach, we figure out strategy, we figure out team design, we figure out tools and things like that, but we figure out, more importantly, how we're going to measure success. The reason why that's important is because there's a pretty big reality going on here, and I don't know if you've got this in your business or you've seen it in other people's businesses, but most AI projects aren't making it beyond proof of concept. And there's lots of really cool things happening, as we've just seen, and tools and approaches that are making it that technical reasons are not really the reasons they're failing. It can be. We see that a lot. We see a lot of technical issues when we come into businesses and try and help them where they've had some false starts or they've wasted a whole bunch of time and money and they want help. But often it's coming down to a couple of other key reasons, which is firstly around misalignment between what is the business seeing as success and what is the technical team doing to measure that success. We looked at, in the previous talk, some really important areas around evals that most of the time people sitting in the decision-making rooms don't even hear about. They just expect it's going to work, they expect it's going to be good, and we've got this thing, we call it the tomato test. The reason we call it the tomato test is because we were in a situation once where we had something in an AI sort of prompt and a chat where we thought, this is working so brilliantly. You ask it the question, it's going to come out, it's polite, it works, it's valuable. And then one of the CEOs or the CEO wrote, what is a tomato? Just randomly in it. And it spat out some absolute nonsense, and he went, it's not ready. So they don't understand that side. But on the flip side as well, a lot of technology teams, when we go and co-work with them and we sort of understand where they're up to in their approach and what tools are they using and things like that, there's a disconnect between that and the business goals. What is the business trying to do? Why did they kick this off to begin with? Why did they even allow the time or invest the money into sort of doing that? So there's definitely this misalignment. There's definitely an issue with data. I talked about two scenarios before. One that's massive, lots of users already, lots of historical data, and one that's starting from scratch. The approach to data is often a big reason why these things fail. Some people are on the edge of it's got to be perfect, we have to spend 12 months figuring it all out, and others are like, we don't know where to start. And then there is often a lack of, and this all boils down to clear success metrics. And I believe that evals as an approach is definitely one way to help solve that problem. So we invented a methodology. It's not groundbreaking. When I say invent, I more mean steal, adapted, borrowed, and made a nice slide about it. But essentially, we looked at it from Let's walk businesses through a few simple steps. We're going to define success. What does it mean to the business? What does it mean to these other areas, which we're going to go into in a minute? We're going to build some foundations. We want to move fast. And just to put it in context, normally by the time we start working with a business, we get a proof of concept out the door in about 6 weeks. It's not ready for production, but it's ready to play with. So we move fast, but it's not an excuse to not do the things you need to do first, right? Agile has never been an excuse to take shortcuts. Agile is a methodology about doing all the things you need to do, but in a really effective way. And so we need to make sure we've got some foundations, and eval tooling is one of them, definitely. The other thing is, and the other guys have talked about this as well, which is great, is rapid iterations. How do we build the tools, build the approach, work with a team, get the right data, whatever we need to do so we can iterate quickly. This is not about bunkering down for 12 months and coming out and going, ta-da, here's AI. And as soon as we can, without taking the shortcuts, how do we start getting real users playing with it? Because I'm sitting in a room where I think that from the hands I saw at the back, there's some prompt engineers, maybe not all full-time, but we're all dabbling or working with that sort of skill set. It's a really important skill set. But just like UX, remember the old problems we used to have 10 years ago? Until we actually get real users playing with things, we miss the point. We don't understand, and we get as far as we can without them, and then suddenly they're plonked in front of them like a CEO going, what is tomato? And we're suddenly like, we've missed the point, or this is all wrong, or they didn't use it the way that we thought we were going to use it. So getting tests with real users is super important in the process. And then how do we scale smartly? So moving on, I'm going to kick everything. You're going to have a real challenge when you get up here in a minute. The other thing, just to mention before we get into the evals we use, is how do we get the business to focus on one use case at a time? We know we need to build for lots of things. But if we get too distracted and if we get too diverse in everything we're trying to do at once, we won't do any of it well. Well, not well enough that the business will go, I get it. Or that the tech team will go, I've solved it. And so if you can get alignment on eventually this will do all these things, but how about for the next few weeks, we just get it to do this? You're already winning. And that's a huge lesson. And normally, the consultant coming in, that's our job, is to help focus in on what that is. So we do, our tech team, and if they were here, they would definitely talk to you more about the types of evals and the level that the guys you just had were up talking about. This is the way I talk to the board, the C-suite, about evals. This is how I'm trying to educate them on behalf of the tech team around why is this super important to think about. And so we break it down into kind of 4 areas that most businesses seem to get. And it's not, a template that you just set and forget. It matters and changes depending on the business. But broadly speaking, all that text up on the screen is really just asking 4 questions. Is it worth it? Normally the budget holder is the one asking that. Does it work? Technical teams will dive into that, and they've got all the different ways they choose to do it. But if we're not aligned on what working means, we've got a big problem. Will people use it? Adoption is the last thing everyone thinks about. I can't tell you how many times, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Salesforce and you flick on the AI button, you're paying extra per user for the tool, or whether it's something we've spent 12 months building and we've launched it and we're so super excited. To get someone to click on the bloody button and do the thing is huge. And if you can't get adoption with AI, whether it's the end customer, your internal staff, whatever it is, you're losing already. You've lost value. So adoption is a big area we measure. And then, of course, there's governance and risk. And it can't be the afterthought, even though it's ironically number 4 on the slide. It has to be part of the foundation work. How are we going to approach it? How are we going to educate ourselves on it? How are we going to educate the business on it? And like the examples we just talked about, what is the most important first step for us? Is it about politeness? Is it about bias? Is it about security? And how do we approach each of those sorts of things? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to those original stories. I'm going to quickly dive through for each one the different way it played out when we looked at those 4 areas of evals. I'm not going to get super technical. You've already heard some great tools and things like that you can use when doing this. Again, I'm putting the business hat on and I'm thinking what matters to the people that are signing the checks. So the large law firm, just to set up the use case with a bit more details, they had 25,000 staff. In fact, it was 35,000 by the time they had contractors. So that was already big. The support team was getting about 1,500 on average per day support tickets. This is everything from the printer in this room's not working, right through to I'm heading to New York next week, what's the expense policy? It was random. They had about 9 years of service desk history. Sometimes the tickets were completed brilliantly. All the context, steps to repeat, here's the resolution, customer's happy. Other times, there was no details in there. There was like 900 intranet sites. If I had to guess, probably 10% of them were relevant. There was all this PDFs and documentation, so all the things that we had to bring in. Both these, by the way, did use like RAG systems, even when we didn't have the starting data. But we thought, okay, we've got something, but maybe it's too much. Maybe it's not useful. How are we going to determine that? And the business objective for them, the reason why they signed the check was, how do we make our support team more efficient? And how do we get people to help themselves? Simple, right? Tech startup. We had a founder. He was pretty well funded for a startup and had this great idea. It's a great idea. You think about Upwork, you think about Freelancer, you think about those things where you're trying to connect someone with skills with the people that can help them. They had a vision for an end-to-end AI journey. So we're not just talking about the matching part. We're talking about build your profile, AI will do it. Build your brief, AI will do it. Match, AI will do it. Evaluate how the project went, AI will do it. Comments, feedback, AI will do it. This was their vision. It's awesome. Where are you at? How many users you got? None. What use cases have you already started with? None. That's why you guys are here. Help us. So completely different challenge. But the objective was, how can we test the proposition, make sure it works, build confidence for our investors that we are onto something. AI can make this different and bring better value to customers. Interesting. So let's go to business value, eval. Is it worth it? So we dived into a few very specific kind of metrics. There was definitely more under the hood of how we brought this together. But we built some really quick dashboards for both these businesses to see exactly what they could see. Right? So the first one was, we needed the benchmark data. How long is it taking already on average to answer a ticket? Of the 1,500 per day on volume that they're getting, I can't remember how many support staff they had, 80 or something. How long is it taking to resolve a ticket on average? And how much of that is manual? We already knew that, 100%. We then looked at our tooling, the approach we took to that, and it got, again, much more into the details. But we basically tracked those two things. That was pretty easy. We didn't actually need to dive into any models or anything like that. We basically just sort of made sure we looked at the timestamps and things like that, resolution rates, all that. And practically speaking, what we did was, once we ingested all the data into it, and I'm jumping a few steps here, but we essentially, before we launched it to the actual staff, we got a handful of the support agents that were working. These are the human agents, not the AI agents. We didn't have that yet. And we basically got them to interrupt their workflow. We forced them first, or asked nicely, to, when you get a ticket, would you please come over here, ask it the question, or copy-paste, and see what you think about the result. You don't have to use it, just rate it.